So here's the way it leveraged out globally, right? The people that have the upper hand because of what you set up, for whatever reason, didn't want women to go to school. At least according to your women's rights movement, you want women to go to school. They would kidnap women, right? Didn't want them educated. Didn't want them to be able to have a public life. Certainly didn't want them to have any advanced higher education. And consider the people who were employed in the government in any way, shape, or form, including and especially in connection with places that would acquire weapons to arm people that were loyal to the government to be collaborators. You've just forced collectivized the entire country and you strategically sabotaged the port system so you could play games with. I'm really trying to figure out what you wanted from there. Did you think you were going to get some nuclear insurance? Because I told you, the big problem you're running is when you're doing this, you make yourself a very easy target. Where is my resignation letter from the Young Women's Empowerment Project? I contend that was actually a very valuable security document. If nothing else, it would have closed out what would have been my professional employment record with a nonprofit that had both private and foundation funding. There was a fiduciary responsibility by the members of the boards of directors, however many there were, and the treasurer. And if there was a conflict of interest because she also, in performance of her board role, had a job with a public agency that received federal appropriations, and you do not have my actual resignation letter on file as part of my personnel record, I'm suing every one of you. Every member of the board, everybody who was employed when I resigned, and every funder at every agency that gave you a grant. Every single one of them. I'm suing you. I'm suing you for violating the anti money laundering statutes of the Anti Terrorist and Effective Death Penalty Act. And using acts of human trafficking, including sex trafficking, in order to aid and abet terrorism. The problem we have now is you all were the ones that were allowed to have some legitimacy, and your networks were allowed to have some legitimacy, and your fraud helped aid and abet a default on the terrorism risk insurance program. And that means the leverage falls to people you've aided and abetted being maligned and characterized as terrorists, while you tried to create some sort of schematology domestically that was supposed to be about racial justice when it absolutely was not. Because I have a feeling that what's going to happen is a disproportionate representation of people that are rightfully going to be targeted for their infiltration of the government are going to be people of color, specifically women of color, aren't they? Yes, they are. Nonetheless, you're going to need to produce this document. You're going to need to produce the actual, or at least a verified, certified photocopy of the letter of resignation I submitted when I was the co director.